Oh, sorry. For the recording, I'll say it again. We're called to order. Does anybody have, and we're looking for adjustments to the agenda, if any. We have two pieces of new business tonight. First, Harry is going to share continued discussions on municipal planning grants, future land use mapping, zoning bylaw changes, and then Jacob from the state will present on NDA designation and its benefits. Any adjustments?
Well, I think we can offer to flip around. Jacob, I'm slightly off camera here. That's my hand. We can flip around and have you go first, so we're not taking up too much of your time.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I don't think we need do we need a motion for that, or can we just do it?
Don't know.
Let's just do it. Okay, great. And then point 3, we need to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2024. Does anybody want a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Got a second? I can second, I think. I'll second. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Aye. It looks like that motion passes. All right.
Were the minutes sent out?
I don't know. We should probably send them just first.
I think a packet of everything, including the minutes, was sent out maybe a week ago, not quite.
Yeah, we did send the agenda, but we didn't have permission.
Oh,
I only saw the agenda
okay.
in the attached to the email. On Friday.
They're on the website.
All right. In the meantime, maybe we move to public comment before we get into the new business. Is there any public comment online in person? I can't see the whole screen, so feel free to unmute yourself and just let us know. No public comment? Okay. So with that, I think we're on to new business. Jacob, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. I'm just sending you a sharing request so I can share my screen. But while I get permission, I'll introduce myself. I'm Jacob Hemrick. I'm a planning and policy manager in the Department of Housing and Community Development. That's a department in the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. I've been with the state about 6 years. I work in Montpelier, but I'm coming to you from my home tonight in Berry City. Okay, looks like I have sharing permission now. And if somebody could just give me a thumbs up that they're seeing the slide. All right, perfect. All right, so you got my name. I'm going to talk about the Neighborhood Development Area Designation Program as well as the designation programs in general as they exist right now and as they're changing over the next couple of years. I could take questions as I go or to hold questions at the end. It's kind of up to you as the commission chair, what your preference is. So
we have a pretty small group, so maybe questions as we go.
Okay.
Just it's easier for folks, Yeah. If you don't mind.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I'm in the division in the department called Community Planning and Revitalization. This is our team. We're a small but mighty team, and we use a collaborative place-based approach to land use planning and community development that empowers state and local leaders to plan for and build vibrant, inclusive, and resilient downtowns, villages, and neighborhoods. We do a lot of support for planning commissions and select boards all around the state, as well as regional planning commissions. We do that work by providing outreach and training like tonight, providing technical advice for certain projects, running grant programs, supporting the state designation programs that I'm talking about tonight. We staff a community investment board that confers the designations. as well as some other benefits like tax credits. We lead special projects like the Homes for All project you might have seen in the news the last year, and we do a lot of policy and program work and work with partners all across this state. Um, all of our work and our programs are really rooted in our statewide planning goals, and including the first goal to plan development so as to maintain historic settlement pattern of compact villages and urban centers surrounded by rural countryside. The designation program that I'm talking about tonight has been around for 25 years. We have more than 295 designated areas in every county and every regional planning commission, regional 11 regions in the state. And over time, it's become a coordinating platform for shared priorities and investments, really grounded in Vermont's common goals in principles. And just to get a sense of how many people the designation programs serve, about 67% of Vermont municipalities have at least one designation, and almost 70% of Vermonters live in a census block with the designation. So about 442,000 people interact with these programs, often without knowing it. There are 5 designations. We have 3 civic and commercial core designations. Woodstock has a village center designation. And we also have add-on designations to a core, the neighborhood development area designation and the growth center designation. My presentation tonight is really focused on the neighborhood development area designation as an add-on to your village center, since that's what I understand Woodstock's exploring. Just to give you an example of what these areas look like in a real place, this is Randolph on the right. The designated downtown is in red, and the neighborhood development area is in blue. So you can see how they've captured certain zoning districts, excluded flood hazard areas, and overlaid a little bit with the designated downtown. And that was how Randolph approached the designation. So the neighborhood development area designation is established in Title 24, Chapter 76A. It's really about connecting the dots to support this new home construction by providing tax and regulatory incentives, as well as funding incentives. And right now we have 18 neighborhood development area designations in 17 municipalities. It's the newest designation of the list that you saw there, and it's growing. What does a neighborhood development do for a community? It really is about helping build homes Vermonters can afford in convenient, walkable places, like the buffer here in and around your designated village center in Woodstock, using traditional neighborhood design that is familiar to anyone who's been around a Vermont village, with connected streets, buildings that face the streets, cars set back to the side and rear, things that based on what I've seen in Woodstock, I'm sure you have already put into your regulations. So what are the benefits of an NDA? There's a lot of grant priority that's assigned to the neighborhood development area designation. And some of those are eligibility based, and most of them are priority based. So for instance, in the Department of Housing and Community Development, we have an annual municipal planning grant program. It's been around for more than 30 years. Projects that relate to a designated area get priority points in that scoring process. Same thing with the Agency of Transportation bicycle and ped grant alternative, or bike ped grants and transportation alternatives. Brownfield money is prioritized in designated center. Community development block grants are prioritized. State affordable housing funds from VHFA, the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, DHCD. The Forest Parks and Recreation Department has looked at projects for outdoor recreation and their relationship to economic development in downtown. So you get the point. A lot of state grants look at these designations and try to flow pour money into these areas. There's also a lot of regulatory benefits. A lot of them focus on Act 250. So as of last year's Act 181 extended interim exemptions to certain designated areas. But before Act 181, there was an exemption for mixed income priority housing projects, and those could be for sale or for rent. They could be even mixed use and have a component of commercial on a site. So it was an avenue for an Act 250 exemption for a project that had some affordability. If you're in Act 250 and you're doing a development within the neighborhood development area, there's a 50% fee reduction. There's certain presumptions of compliance, so they check that box for criterion 9L. That's the anti-sprawl criterion. There's also fee reductions if you have to pay for agricultural soil mitigation in Act 250. That's a benefit of having a neighborhood development area. Another financial benefit is that state water wastewater permit fees are capped at $50. There's a land gains tax exemption for capital gains based on the length of ownership. There's appeal limitations of local land use permits that are issued within the neighborhood development area. They cannot be appealed based on character tests. There's a pilot downtown and village tax credit eligibility. It wasn't funded this past year, but it may return next year. It's still in statute. Same thing, Better Places crowd granting was not funded last year, but could return in this legislative session. We'll see. And last, there's a location presumption for a tax increment financing district. So if you wanted to do a TIF district to pay for large scale capital improvements to support development that wouldn't happen without those, and then pay back the bonds with incremental increases to the education and municipal tax, this designation can help you access a TIF approval. So I just threw a lot at you there. I'll pause there and just see if there's any questions on that.
Hey, Jacob.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Trina in Tolliver. How you doing?
Doing well. Yeah.
I had a question on the map you showed a second ago with
Sure.
for Woodstock, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no.
One of the things I've noticed, so there's been conversation in the East End as far as development here in Woodstock, and I was curious, and since you have the map here, that East End doesn't extend all the way to our village border, but I see you have this kind of cloud-like design. Does that mean that there is room to?
Yeah, there is room, and you're taking me where I'm headed. So
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Walk through the application process, but I just wanted to give you the basics first of.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, of how why communities want to pursue this, but I'll walk you through the application process and how you can determine the boundaries. So, I'm sure as most of you as planning commissioners are probably aware of the basics of Act 250. It's statewide development review for larger scale, higher impact development. Until last year, most housing projects except priority housing projects would be in Act 250 if there were 10 or more units. That's really been shaken up a lot with these interim exemptions, and they link back to designations. So I've highlighted the three that would relate to Woodstock here. And these are interim Act 250 exemptions good through January 2027. And so any priority housing project within a half mile of a neighborhood development area would be exempt from Act 250. Any housing project with 75 or fewer units entirely in a neighborhood development area would be exempt. And the project entirely is within your designated village center of 50 or fewer units, or up to a quarter mile around it would also be exempt. So these are, this is a recognition by the legislature that there needs to be an effort to speed up housing approvals and to rely on communities review, municipalities review, towns review to get housing projects approved. So how have all these benefits made a difference? It supported the development of over 3,800 dwelling units in mixed income developments between 2017 and 2023. It saved an average of $50,000 in fees per project, and it's reported to reduce the project permitting timelines by an estimated 7 months. So it saves time and it speeds up the development. So to Trina, to your question, how do you prepare an application? We have application guidelines on the website, and the regional planning commissions are a great resource to help prepare applications. So Two Rivers Ottaquechee is there in your serves your town. There are some key eligibility requirements. You have to have a core designation. You do. You have a village. You have to have an RPC confirmed planning process. I didn't check that, but I assume
They do.
Woodstock. Yeah, you're in good standing. Okay. You have to fill out a draft application showing us that your bylaws are in good shape. Hold a pre-application meeting with us, and you submit the normal paperwork. And we take in applications generally the monthly, the first Monday of the month. However, the board is not meeting again until April, so that would be the earliest we could take in an application. The application form itself is an editable Word document. We ask that the responses stay brief. When we're doing the pre-application review with whoever prepares this application on behalf of Woodstock, I'll be looking for draft responses, and we're going through and making sure that you've met all the requirements. And a lot of the requirements that I'm looking for, that the application writer would just need to provide some section references and explain how things work in Woodstock's bylaws. There's a mapping component, and we have a Vermont Planning Atlas, which can help your planners look at potential constraints and think about boundaries, and then come back to you as the Planning Commission and see if this kind of matches with what your expectation is. The statute doesn't require Planning Commission or even Select Board approval, but it's always nice to see a lot of buy-in from all the stakeholders. At the end of the day, once you have a boundary determined, we just need one shape file for the boundary you're proposing from the regional planning commissions, as well as maps of your zoning districts, flood hazard and river corridor areas, which need to be excluded. We look at steep slopes and see if there are major steep slopes that need to be avoided, as well as important natural resources and existing and planned public facilities and complete streets. And I've done a little bit of mapping in this presentation, so we can talk about the areas you're thinking about later. For any village, what we do is we pull up the planning atlas and we click on the quarter-mile buffer around the edge of a village. And that's what's called the neighborhood planning area. And that's the starting point for designation. Now, you can go beyond that boundary. The board does have to have a supermajority agree to certain findings based on constraints in the area. But this is the starting point for the NDA. And it's really built around this concept of walkability, that's the walkshed for your village. There are a lot of NDAs that have been approved with extensions beyond the boundary. And so here's an example in Brattleboro, where, a lot of their planning area was in the state of New Hampshire and the Connecticut River. They also had some river corridor and flood hazard areas. That was a reason for them to push out a little southwest of their downtown and extend their neighborhood development area that direction. Over in Manchester, similar situation. You can see they've excluded the river corridor and flood hazard area. It bisects the neighborhood development area around their village, and they've included areas outside that buffer area. So that, I think, is going to be possible also in Woodstock, given the number of constraints I saw within your buffer. There's also an opportunity, if you just have one housing project that you want to be really supportive of, to do a site-based designation. Heinsberg did this for a perpetually affordable senior housing project in partnership with a developer called Cathedral Square, active in Northwest Vermont. And so they designated one parcel to access the benefits that they were looking for to get the stacks funding streams to make that project happen, and to make it happen faster with just local review. So what do we look at for natural resources? We do look at the presence of agricultural soils, and if they're actively farmed. There is a lot of overlap generally between compact settlement and some prime or statewide significant agricultural soils. So the board recognizes there's some give there, and staff too. River corridors, though, and flood hazard areas don't have a lot of give. You need to exclude those unless you have local flood hazard and river corridor bylaws that are consistent with the state rule. So if you have both bylaws and you think they meet ANR's adopted standard, we can work with ANR's river program and see and verify that. And then that would allow you to overlay the neighborhood development area over the river corridor and floodplains, because we know you're going to be reviewing that development and it's going to meet a flood safe standard under this statewide regulations administered locally. We also just do a scan of like, are there major wetlands that we know about? Are there rare, threatened, and endangered species or significant natural communities? So those are all things that this program's looking at. It's doing the planning ahead, so the state is willing to ease up on its regulations on the other side. We also,
Jacob,
yeah.
a quick question. I didn't see like ridge lines mentioned either here or earlier. Is that a
We
consideration
do look
as
at,
well?
yeah, we look at steep slopes.
Steep slope, but not ridge
Yeah,
line
so
in
that and
particular?
generally, yeah, most ridge lines would kind of be there. And I did click on that and notice that you do have quite some significant steep slopes um
Yep.
in your neighborhood development area. Now, that can be handled a couple different ways. I mean, some bylaws have really good excavation fill driveway standards that would avoid development or have good standards for development on steep slopes. Others don't. But a lot of the neighborhood development areas do have some steep slopes, but it's really about if there's a major place that really is kind of a riskier place to develop, that would be something you would carve out and maybe push out other developable parcels outside the boundary.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question. We also look just to see where the sidewalks are, and since the program is built about walkability, it's really about making sure that there are existing or planned sidewalks that are going to serve this. Planned can look like a lot of different things in a lot of different communities. It might be that certain sidewalk connections are programmed in a capital plan. It might be that it's very clear that when development goes in, that you're going to force a sidewalk to be constructed. It could look like a bike ped study, standalone study that Woodstock has done. But where sidewalks do not exist, we're looking to make sure that there are planned connections. So this is the town of Waitsfield. It's kind of a noisy map, but they have sidewalks and multi-use trails. So it would allow us to consider this blue neighborhood development area designation and approve that for the town of Waitsfield. So you're getting a flavor here that you can see it's not just big Chittenden County towns that are in this program. There's a lot of small and medium-sized towns around the state. One thing that you do need to have, though, and I wasn't totally sure if Woodstock had all three, but you need to have zoning or all two, zoning and subdivision bylaws. Does Woodstock have subdivision bylaws?
No. Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So that would be something that would need to be put into this, and generally, without subdivision bylaws, there's generally not great standards for the layout of a new streets in traditional neighborhood design format. At least there may be some quirk to your zoning bylaw that you cover that, but that's one of the main things that a subdivision bylaw will do is the layout of new streets for new neighborhoods. So that's one thing that would be on your checklist, is to get subdivision bylaws, and you would also need that to access some of the new Act 250 benefits and the interim exemptions. They're all linked to towns that have zoning and subdivision. I pulled up your zoning map. I think I got the right one. But what we're doing when we're looking at these applications is we're doing a district by district analysis to make sure all the zoning districts meet the baseline minimum standards for a neighborhood development area designation. So I would look at I think the inset was a little lower on this map, but I would look at that inset, and when we're going through that pre-application meeting, you'd walk me through each zoning district, and we'd be checking to make sure that allows the density that's expected and has the standards that we'd be looking for traditional neighborhood design, compact settlement, things that drive more naturally affordable development outcomes. All the districts that you include need to have at least 4 dwelling units an acre. So this is the standard that gets applied in the application, and this is what the application form looks like. You put in each zoning district and explain how density gets calculated in that zoning district. Then we have 2 checklists. One's related to building and lot patterns generally, and one's related to complete streets. And I don't need to go through all these, but this is part of the application. We're looking for a mix of uses, small lot sizes allowed, adaptive reuse of 1 unit buildings allowed, permissive dimensional standards like setbacks or lot coverage or building coverage, more permissive heights like at least 3 stories, features like that that allow for more naturally affordable housing development. The other thing is complete streets checklist. So we're looking for street connectivity requirements. These are all standards that often occur in subdivision regulations. And the state does offer a municipal planning grant program that that's announced right now with applications due in March that could help Woodstock prepare any necessarily bylaw amendments that you need to make or help prepare a new subdivision bylaw. So
We're all over that, Jacob. We are in
perfect.
fact
Okay.
applying for the MPG.
Awesome. Well, good to know.
Yeah.
So for both of these checklists, you don't need to get all 10. You just need to get 8 out of 10. So you need to figure out which standards are right for Woodstock, and then come back with the pre-application meeting. So this takes us back to Trina's question. This is Woodstock. What's our designatable area look like? So this is the baseline, the planning area around the village. And I just clicked on some of the constraints in the Vermont Planning Atlas. So this includes conserved areas, it includes rare, threatened, endangered species. I have the flood hazard and river corridor areas, and you can see that quite a bit of the area within that planning area is highly constrained or undevelopable. I also looked at, I pulled up the steep slopes to marry to your question, and there's also a lot of steep slopes too. So the map is really lighting up, and you can kind of then see what's left over. And I can see that there's some flat land here. I think this is the east area. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. That's left. So then my question for you is, what are you thinking about as a commission in terms of the area that is a priority for you? And it may be too early to say. Maybe it's a lot to take in right now. But if there are priority areas, I think we can talk about those areas where they occur outside that buffer, and we'd look at them to make sure that you have a planned sidewalk connection, and it's in a zoning district that meets the standards. And then we can talk about how to push out that boundary beyond the planning buffer.
Yeah, so Jacob, the real area of focus that has been brought up in town here for years and that we're trying to move forward with is this sort of east end of the village. So right where
here.
Route 4 kind of turns north there. And above it, north of there, I should say.
Okay.
That's probably the town's strongest candidate for more infill development. And yeah, there have been studies produced in the past, lots of previous efforts to try to get stuff going there. So that's really the main kind of like Woodstock's most eligible expansion area, I guess.
Okay. And that's Harry, right?
That's me. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Got it. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, anything more than, once you start to get more than a half mile or 3/4 of a mile, it can be a little bit of a stretch for the board. But let's talk about it and look at it in detail and see what's possible in a draft application, and see if we can find a way to make the program work for your goals and for the statutory requirements. So that's fundamentally what my job is make sure the law gets followed. So that was designation as it exists right now. We have this big transition happening in the next 2 years where we're moving from a 5 designation model to a 2 designation model. There's going to be centers and neighborhoods with different steps for centers. It's a simplification of the programs that was based on a statewide outreach project led by Smart Growth America and Community Workshop at Bethel to do a health checkup on the designation program 25 years on. I bring this up because obviously it may affect how you think about these programs or the timing of how you work through the requirements. But the results of that big statewide outreach was a call for simpler designations, more accessible and coordinated administration, better benefits and support for local priorities on housing and infrastructure and climate resilience, more accessible information and promotion, and better monitoring of the impacts. So this new framework is going to start to go into effect around December 20, as early as, or a little bit before December 2026. But our existing programs, the one that I just presented on tonight, is going to continue through December 31st, 2025. So that's sort of the time frame that you would need to be, it'd be this year that you would need to be pursuing a neighborhood development area designation. And if you get a neighborhood development area designation, it would automatically transfer in to the new neighborhood framework. So, and there would be no loss of incentives during the transition. And that transition actually occurs upon a state board approval of a regional plan. So there's no real reason to wait if you're interested in pursuing this right now and moving forward through subdivision regulations. But if you don't think you can meet that December 31st, 2025 timeline, then I would recommend that you turn your attention to the regional planning process and how you're going to map the neighborhoods for that through Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Planning Commission's regional plan update. And all 11 regions are updating their regional plans to meet these requirements. So what happens with designation 2050, the next version of this, is that all the new designations are going to flow from the regional plan. And they're going to be compatible with these new tiers that Act 250 is using to apply jurisdiction. Tier 1 is going to have more exemptions from Act 250. Tier 2 is going to be mostly status quo. And Tier 3 is envisioned to have higher jurisdiction, but it depends on rulemaking with a longer timeline. So these land use categories in this table you see here, downtown center, village center, planned growth area, village areas, those are new regional future land use map areas. And when those areas are approved by the State Land Use Review Board that the governor just appointed last week, then they will be automatically designated as centers and neighborhoods and eligible for benefits under the new program. Another quirk to the timeline is that the application deadline for the designations under the old framework is October 1st, 2025. So that's really when Woodstock would need to finish up their subdivision regulations and their application and get before the Community Investment Board to get in the door under the old program and then transfer into the new framework in 2026. So, and I'll say the way the statute was set up, there was a safety net to say there will be no expiration of any lost benefits for pre-existing designations like your village center or like your neighborhood development area designation. And those will all stay vested through 2032. So that's the safety net. We're also going to be working on a big report over the next year on new incentives and improved technical assistance for rural towns and lower capacity towns. That's certainly something that we hear a lot across the state about complex infrastructure projects and limited capacity, especially in smaller population towns. So that's the overview of the designation as it exists today, how things are changing, the benefits and the application process. And I am here as a resource throughout the process and can answer any questions, provide accessibility accommodations if anybody needs it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jacob,
Thank you. That was great. Yep.
I have a question.
Sure, I'm going to stop sharing unless you want me to bounce back to the slides, then I'll share again. So
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt somebody in the room. Did Harry have a question?
Nope.
Okay. So we know the application deadlines, but once you apply, how long does it usually take to go through, assuming everything is in good order, before you would receive the designation?
the same month.
Oh, wow, it's quick.
Yeah.
The key word being in good order.
And good. That's right.
But, yeah. Okay, great. And then also I wondered, is it possible I get a copy of the presentation? I'd like to share it with the housing working group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I can send that. What's the best way to get that to you, Harry or?
Either or, yeah, I'm happy to forward it to Trina.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Harry.
Yep.
Jacob, great presentation. Thank you so much.
And also
I know with
Megan
a
used
lot
this
of
way
programs
to
like
get information.
this, there's it works well, really well with like towns of a certain size or
Mm.
planning departments of a certain size. And
Yeah.
I know you said that there are towns of all different sizes that are part of this, but is there like a sweet spot, where it works particularly well for a town of a particular size or resources? And related to that, what's the downside? Are there any downsides for us to not applying?
Yeah, great question. I don't really know if there's a sweet spot, but I would say most of the towns that are in the program have a population more than 2,500. I think the smallest is Westford, which is a small town in Chittenden County, under 1,000 people. But the city of Burlington has one, Manchester has one, Brattleboro, Randolph, Berlin even. So there's a really diverse mix. I think I don't see necessarily um, the program being greatly affected by municipality, so long as there's um, a, a zoning administrator and development review board or planning board, zoning board of adjustment. That's all the program really needs to work. The downside is that some communities do wrestle with the standards that the program expects, and so we've done bylaw reviews for this program, and the bylaws aren't in shape for traditional neighborhood design or complete streets development, and they need to do some bylaw amendments, and they're some of the standards like requiring a sidewalk can be tough conversations in more cost constrained towns.
Thank you.
Any other?
But other than that, there's no application cost. I think there's way more benefits than drawbacks in my view. But it does take some time to put the application together too.
Hey, Jacob. I know you're not tech support, but I did notice on the page for the NDA that when it talks about the qualified mixed income projects, it says click here, it doesn't go through. So it's
Okay. You know what? The land use review board the natural resources board was just renamed to the land use review board, and they're going through major website transition.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But I do IT fixes, so I will look at that tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great info. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jacob, Alex, Molly, thank you very much for the presentation. Super helpful. One question I have while looking at the online materials and sort of like checklist and guidelines is there's a statement around existing public services like water or sewer. I think it's sewer or water. Are there, I guess, specific requirements with respect to is it or is it and does it have to be existing and covering the entire area to be designated?
Okay, well, I want to check that resource that you're looking at, because it used to be that the program did require that, but it does not anymore. And I believe we've removed every PDF that has a reference to water sewer service areas.
Okay.
So if you found one, definitely, if you could shoot me an email, that might be another tech issue that we need to fix. But the program did used to require that, and no longer does look at water or sewer service areas. But certainly that enables compact development and is really helpful. But
thanks. I'll send you a link. It doesn't have any sort of like date in the PDF link, so I'll.
Okay. All right.
You.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I got the sense that some people maybe have a little bit of information overload if you're not already familiar with a lot of this
Yes.
nomenclature, like state designations, regional future land use areas. So, and there's a lot obviously in transition right now as the state kind of changes how it does the whole designation process. I think the bottom line for us that everybody on the planning commission should understand is that a lot of the requirements that Jacob's talking about that should be in the bylaws to make us eligible for neighborhood development area designation are kind of just things that are good to have regardless.
Yep.
And as we go through the bylaws and revise them, I think it's a good thing to try to get a lot of these things implemented, especially, complete streets and subdivision, these areas that are really lacking in the bylaws right now. And I would love to include that in our municipal planning grant application that we're putting together right now, which is mainly focusing on the town plan, but we can go beyond that as well to try to get some of these things implemented in the zoning bylaws as well. So
most of the requirements are more like good hygiene than making an opinionated sort of. choice on how
something that I didn't know until I met with Jacob separately was if the bylaws meet the requirements of the NDA program, you as a planning commission or the town, no one from the town actually has to apply. Anyone, period, can apply to have the town designated as an NDA area. So it's kind of just like, if your bylaws are in compliance, you can just get that designation. A developer could apply.
So a developer can say, I want the benefit.
Exactly. So if our bylaws are eligible, then they could just go out and request that designation be, because there's no cost to the town. It doesn't change anything about the town's underlying regulations. It just provides benefits for a certain area. So as long as the existing regulations are in alignment, I can just be like, can we be an NDA, please? And put a proposal forward to the downtown board and try to get it designated. So yeah, but these are things that are just good to have.
So is the biggest open gap then subdivision bylaws?
Yeah, it's very thin in the current bylaws. And the complete streets language as well.
So, Jacob, regarding the NDA, is that a requirement to have the NDA designation in order to apply for any TIF districts, or it's just beneficial to have the NDA?
No, it's beneficial because to get a TIF, there's I don't know, there's like 5 criteria that you have to meet. A certain number of it's maybe unemployment, low moderate income, designation. The wealthier towns generally need the designations to qualify. So.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Jacob, can a community do a TIF district in a greenfield site, extending sewer there and doing a master plan?
I'm gonna need that restated. I can't hear.
Yeah. Can the TIF district be in a designated greenfield area where you're extending sewer and water into those areas?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it can be. So that's administered by the Vermont Economic Progress Council and gubernatorial appointee Jess Hartleman. So that would be something to be able to get an answer with confidence, I'd reach out to Jess on that. And I can look into it with her and loop back. But it's unusual, but I do think Killington's TIF district recently did include some greenfield area. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, this is great. So, all right. Well, so my task for you are look into TIF district, get this presentation, get those pesky website issues fixed. Alex is gonna send me that doc to make sure that we get that off the server wherever that is. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight, and thank you for your service. I've been a planning commissioner and a city council member and mayor, and been through a lot of these meetings. Appreciate all you do for your town.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Jacob used to be the mayor of Berry City, actually.
Really?
Yeah, which is, I mean, he's very young, obviously, so
been like 25.
I know,
years
yeah.
there.
So yeah, interesting background. Oh, to be from a part of Vermont that has mayors, very interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just about to roll.
Yeah, roll over it. Let's go.
I might move on to somewhere where I'm actually on camera for the, we have a lot of folks not here in person, so. Okay, so first things first, well, Molly, do you have my presentation? Right.
We don't have that locally on this computer.
Ah.
So,
Is there a way you can get into someone's email, or I can send you the link maybe?
let me see what this is just our meeting computer, so we don't have emails on here. Screen share, but
Okay, maybe I can do that from municipal planning grant. So last night I went in front of the joint village trustee about kind of their application for the municipal, what that is. Again, this map in the town and village plan really just duplicated the zoning map, right? And that's, the zoning map has to be in alignment with the future land use map. We are prevented from making any changes to the boundaries of the zoning districts. Basically, we're prevented from changing anything on the zoning map because we're locked into how it is now by the future land use map and the town plan.
Okay,
If that makes sense.
So zoning changes have to align to the future plan.
Correct.
If they're identical, you can't justify any change.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can't make any deviation from what the future land use map is. And at some point, someone just duplicated the zoning map and the future land use map in the town plan. Don't know who, don't care, but we need to change it if we want to make changes to the zoning ever in the future. So that's kind of priority number one for the municipal planning grant, is to open up the town plan and focus on that future land use chapter and the future land use map. It's really intended to be sort of a guiding document and to be, vague's not the right word, but general. So here's the area where we want to grow. Here's the area we conserve and have.
The vagueness gives you wiggle room to be able to justify.
Exactly.
Decisions.
Future in terms of drawing out these maps, how far into the future? Okay.
So your future, you should be thinking about at least on those
Around a
terms. But I mean,
Decade-ish.
yeah,
Yeah.
because if you are just updating it on the regular cycle, it would be every 8 years if you need to make changes. But I mean, it's a lot. That's kind of the scale we're thinking about. So yeah, the process for that is kind of, we get the informal thumbs up from, oh, amazing, thank you. We kind of get the informal thumbs up from the legislative bodies. Already got the informal thumbs up from the planning commission, I think, last month, to go ahead and start preparing the application. So my office is now going to do that. And then it'll come back, the application, once it's finished, will come back. We'll have the planning commission motion to sign off on the application. I'll have to go to the trustees and the select board as well to have them sign off on the application. Then it'll go in. The cycle is kind of delayed this year. It's going to be due at the end of March, and we'll probably hear, I think, by mid-May. Don't quote me on that. Whether we get it or not, and then when and if we get it, we'll have 2 years to actually do the work under the grant. So that's that. Basically, that's kind of my update there. And this is something that this presentation is kind of something that came out of conversations that I had with a few people after the last meeting, and I think the commission would really benefit from sort of just walking through like a hypothetical exercise in the bylaw to sort of experience what it's like to be an applicant, particularly for like a multifamily housing project, which is what my focus really is in working with you all. To try to promote and make it easier to build in Woodstock. And I know a lot of people are new. I think it's a 7-member commission, right? And most people are very, very new. Is that right? Or is it 5? It's 7, yeah.
Now with the new.
Hard to keep track of how many. Yeah. There's been a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of
Yeah.
new people. And a lot of people probably aren't familiar with the bylaws at all, have never had to apply for anything and haven't really had a chance to walk through them. I can't blame you. Like reading a zoning bylaw is just about the last thing that anybody wants to do with their spare time, especially if you don't have an actual project that you want to, that you're actually researching. So if we go to the next slide. So that's kind of what we're doing tonight, is we're going to have a hypothetical project and walk through the bylaws to see where the stumbling blocks are for applicants, and to kind of identify a lot of what I see and folks in my office see as issues with the bylaws right now.
And
These
are
are,
you
oh,
gonna
sorry.
share this with us at the end of this, like?
Yeah,
email it
definitely
out?
can. Yeah, these guys have a copy and I'm sure they can send it out to everyone, but I can do that as well. So this is just kind of like the guiding principles of what we look for in sort of crafting like a modern bylaw, so to speak. So the things we look for can very roughly be broken down into content and usability. So when I say that, I mean the content is the things like the actual regulations, the sort of hard facts and figures. So the use schedule, what uses are allowed in what districts, the boundaries of the districts themselves, how many districts there are, what their definitions of the districts are, and then the general standards, dimensional requirements, all that stuff. And then there's the usability. So how does the document actually work as a living document, right? Like user experience, basically. How are people able to understand the document and use it and understand what the expectations are for getting to a yes on their permit application are, and you know, can they actually anticipate what the requirements are in order to get to that yes? So, I mean, the way I phrase it is, are the conditions for getting a permit empirical, clear, and stated explicitly in the bylaw text? And I think you'll see as we go through this that I think there are many areas where they're not. I'll let you be the judge, but let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so usability. If we want, let's assume that as the select board has said, we want to promote more housing in Woodstock. I agree with that. I hope most of us would agree with that. It's you know, a need around the country, around the state, and certainly locally as well. Let's assume we want to promote more housing in Woodstock. And for the sense of scale, we probably want to be promoting multifamily apartment buildings rather than just single family houses. So if I'm a developer who's going to build a building on spec, a multifamily housing building, they really have to be able to answer these two questions when they're going through the bylaw, or it probably won't go anywhere. The first question is, what can I build on a particular site? And the second question is, what specific conditions do I have to meet to get approval? If they can't answer those questions, it probably is a huge deterrent to them, especially when the number of contractors and developers in Vermont is very limited to begin with. And again, it's not about sort of just letting developers run the show and giving them whatever they want. It's, can they actually use this document? Like, does it actually make sense to them? Yeah, just in general, we're a planning commission. Planning is an exercise of planning in advance, right? So if the document is not letting the users anticipate what they need to do to get that permit in advance, and if we're just being reactionary to permits, that's not a functional planning document. It's a mess. So let's go into the actual bylaw. Let's go to the next slide and see what we can see. And every time I think it's getting into the actual exercise, it's one more slide. Okay, so disclaimer, the parcel that we're looking at, I just kind of chose it random because it's in the East End and it's the area that we're mainly interested in. And I'm oversimplifying things. We're not really going to look at flood regs or other overlays and stuff like that. We're just going to look at, assume this is pretty straightforward, okay? And we're going to focus on a multifamily housing proposal. So next. All right. So with that in mind, let's look at the old bank building site in the East End, next to just north of the two gas stations there. It's a 0.65 acre site. Next slide. All right, so question one, what can I build on this site? Next slide. All right, so the red circle on the map down there, that's the village zoning map. The parcel is, sorry, you can't really see it very well on the overhead projector, but the parcel is that square that's on the left-hand side of Route 4 there. The district it's in is labeled CLI. And wow, it got totally washed out in the presentation, but there should be grayscale for all of the village in the East End that says that our parcel is in the design review district.
There is on here. It's just
That's so weird. Yeah, I guess it's just really bright up there. But yeah, there is grayscale on that image. I don't know why we can't see it in the room, but hopefully you folks at home can see it. So next slide. So yeah, we're in the CLI district and we're in the design review district. So just kind of put a pin in that, put that in the back of your mind. So right away, there's a usability problem.
which is that there is no district called the CLI district in the bylaw. It's called the CL district. I promise you this is the right district. It's the Commercial Light Industrial District. Obviously, that's a pretty minor technicality, but it's a stumbling block right away. It's not great attention to detail for whenever the last time this was updated. But in any case, so we're in the Commercial Light Industrial District. The purpose of the district is to provide for concentrated mixed-use development. And our multi-household building, as you can see highlighted down there at the bottom, is a conditional use. So it is not allowed as a right. It is not allowed without a permit. It is a conditional use. So it has to go through the Development Review Board's conditional use process. So next slide.
Just have a quick question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between small multi-housing and multi-housing?
Yeah, so I kind of cut that out for the simplicity of the presentation, but basically, anytime there's like a use in the bylaw, there will be a definition for it. The first article of the bylaw is definitions. So if there's something that's like that, like multifamily dwelling or single family dwelling, whatever, there's almost always a definition, and that tells you what that use is. So good question. Yeah, just didn't want to add a slide for that, but that's where you would go to look for that, the definition of each use. So yeah, these are the dimensional requirements. So you'll find these in the article that has all the districts in them. So this is the land area and structural requirements for the Commercial Light Industrial District. I really just kind of want to focus on, for the sake of simplicity, on the density requirement. Let's assume that our prospective developer here can get whatever they need within the setbacks and the lot coverage area and all that kind of thing. So let's just look at the density. For some reason that looks like a dot on the projector, but it's 1,500 square feet per residential unit, not 1.5.00. So yeah, let's just focus on that. Assume they can fit everything in the proper setback area. So next slide. All right, so here's our quick back of the envelope math. The site is 0.65 acres, which thanks to imperial units, we know is a nice, neat and tidy 28,314 square feet. At the density of 1,500 square feet per unit, that equals 18.876. That is a maximum. The density is a maximum figure, so you round down. So there's up to 18 units on that site. Next slide. But wait, there's a density bonus. So I debated whether or not to include this because it kind of complicates the issue more than we really need to tonight. But it's probably good that everyone knows that this is out there. So in the village zoning, I believe this was added in the 2023 update that Stephen did. There's what's called a density bonus. What that means is if the developer includes a certain number of units that are designated as affordable, they can build more units than are otherwise allowed under the base density. In this case, the density bonus that's being offered is 50%, or excuse me, 50% and a bonus of 1 habitable floor above the height maximum. And so, okay, the next question is, what is the definition of affordable housing development? What do I have to do to get that density bonus? An affordable housing development in our definitions article in the bylaw is a development of which at least 33% of units, or a minimum of 5 units, whichever is greater, are affordable. What's our definition of affordable? Next slide, please. This is the definition of affordable. We don't need to drill into it, but basically it has, like a standard definition. In this case, for rental units, they have to be affordable to people making 80% of the area median income. That's kind of the, the gross annual income, household income. That's kind of a standard metric that is used in planning and zoning to determine affordability. So that someone making 80% of the area median income doesn't spend more than 30% of their income on rent, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's the definition of affordable. That's how you get the density bonus. Next slide. So more math. The density bonus allows you up to 50% more density. So that equals 1,000 square feet per unit. So again, rounding down, once you divide it, that's up to 28 units if affordability requirements are met. Next slide. So put it simply, to answer the question, what can I build if I'm a developer looking at the site? The zoning right now allows for up to 18 units or up to 28 units if at least 1/3 of those units meet the affordability requirement. So in this case, again, always rounding up because it's a minimum of 33% of the units. That means 10 of the units in that 28 unit development would have to be affordable, and then the other 18 are allowed to be market rate, and they can take advantage of the density bonus. So a little more complicated of an answer because of that density bonus, but basically, if I'm a developer, that answers question 1. What can I build here? Next slide. And this is where the fun begins. So what specific conditions do I have to meet to get approval? Next slide. So in every zoning bylaw, there's general regulations and there will be specific regulations. The general regulations generally are things that apply to every application or every proposed development, or may apply for any proposed development. The specific regulations might apply for specific uses. So if you have something, I don't know, like a gravel pit or something like that, there might be a specific regulation that says like, okay, if you have a gravel pit, you can only operate from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or whatever. And you're not, using dynamite during the middle of the night or what have you. That's a weird example, but it is in some bylaws around here because of, nuisance concerns. So I don't really want to go over any of these specifically. I just kind of underlined a few of them that I think might pertain in particular to multifamily housing, but just wanted to mention that these standards kind of exist in every bylaw, and there's something that every development might have to.
Are Woodstock's versions of these standards relatively sort of typical or standard? I was going to say standard, or are they uniquely complex?
Brian used to be the administrative officer for Woodstock. Mike is the current administrative officer for Woodstock. They can probably answer that question better than I can. I don't see anything outrageous about them. Okay. I don't think there's anything crazy. Some of these might sound like they might pertain to housing, like, and they might corner lots, division of lots, that type of thing. They may. Stuff like height exceptions, you're like, oh, that might apply to housing. It doesn't. It's for like church steeples and silos and stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that general regulations. I mean, can you think of anything weird that, or an omission maybe that doesn't exist? So should I be like podium? The select board's really big on that, but I don't think we really did that.
I think as long
You
as
want a microphone?
we have it for the minutes.
Hi, Brian Kovalik, resident of the town of Woodstock. I live on Happy Valley Road in Tazewell. And as Harry said, I used to assist here on the detail with the zoning office. The general regulations, I don't think there's a lot that's really oddball about them. They're pretty standard, like required frontage or access to public roads is something that is by statute required. You have to have a lot that has that to be developable. There's not a substantial subdivision regulation within the village zoning code. It's like one paragraph and it just defines what's a major or minor subdivision. So not exactly. Here, I wouldn't say that there's some more peculiar, particular regulations that'll come up. Thank you. I mean, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Just, I think there's quite a bit of definitions that are lacking in the documentation. They're referenced in the document, but there's no definitions to kind of give you that clarity.
Yeah. And
just more substantive language in the different sections. Because as a person that's relatively new reading this, there's a lot of lack of clarity, we'll say, and I have to interpret these codes literally based on my role with the town. If there's confusion, I would likely kick it to the boards to make this determination. And I have because of some issues with the lack of clarity.
Yeah, I think beyond everything we're talking about tonight, as we saw with the acronyms for the districts not being identical, there's a lot that could just use general cleaning up. Right. And the definition is a huge area for that. Sometimes the same consistent nomenclature is not used throughout the bylaw. It might refer to a multi-family dwelling when there's a definition for a multi-unit dwelling, stuff like that. And when we're talking about a legal document and something that potentially presents liability for the town, that stuff needs to be tightened up.
Yeah, so. I mean, I tried this exercise for the lot my house is on when I bought it, and I did not successfully get to the end.
Right.
So,
Well, there you go. Okay, so yeah, I do kind of just want to skim over this and just let everybody know it's out there. I encourage everyone to look through the bylaws if you're feeling inspired at some point, but this we can just skip through. So next slide, Molly, please. And we can just skip over that one too. So those were the specific standards. And now we're kind of getting into the meat of what we're going to be talking about. So this is for conditional use approval for a multifamily. Well, this is the conditional use approval process. As we know, our multifamily proposal has to go through this to be approved in the district we're in. A couple of things to kind of draw folks' attention to here. So the standards that are described here come from the Vermont statutes. So these are statutory criteria that the Development Review Board is allowed to make their judgments based on. They're what's called a quasi-judicial body. So they're making judgments on proposals that come in front of them based on these criteria. Theoretically, there should be actual measurable standards after this that they make these judgments based on, but this is kind of the extent of the conditional use policy.
can I ask a question
Yeah.
on that? So the way the state statute says is you may have conditional use policies that have the following types of parameters.
Correct.
We have listed those in ours, and then we have provided no guidance on how to interpret them.
That is correct.
Okay.
As you can see, you're already you're way ahead of where I thought folks would be at this point, but this is obviously a huge problem for people who have proposals. So what I'm trying to get at really is, let's say I want to propose putting 20 units on that site, right?
Sure.
In today's economy, that's almost a $10 million project.
Yep.
I'm spending high six figures, maybe even seven figures on pre-development costs, my legal, my permitting, my architecture, my engineering. Am I going to waste my time with this bylaw when I don't know if there's a light at the end of the tunnel here? And I think we'll see that in a couple of different manifestations here.
Right, just to poke on it a little bit, like the squishiest feels like the character of the area affected.
Yes.
Is there do you have an example, if you've got one you can send around after, of like what a good parameterized character definition?
Well, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So there's a reason I highlighted that one, which is if you go to the next slide, Molly. Like I said, these criteria are taken from Vermont statutes. The Vermont statutes do not say that you can judge based on the character of the area affected. It says you can judge based on the character of the area affected as defined by the purpose or purposes of the zoning district within which the project is located and specifically stated policies and standards of the municipal plan. So they kind of forgot that part, or the law has been changed since that was added to the bylaws, but that is actually what is allowed under Vermont statutes, is the character as defined by the purpose or purpose of the district. So when we say character of the area here, what is actually allowed is not like, what is the vibe of the area? What is the architecture of the area? It is the purpose of the district as written in the bylaws. So next slide. This is the entirety of the purpose of the district as established in the bylaws. So as you can see, the DRB has basically no standing to deny a housing proposal in this area based on that criteria alone.
Okay.
Because the purpose of the district is for concentrated mixed-use development.
And then how does this square with design review district?
Oh, we're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. Yeah, so that's a sticking point. I'll talk about this again, but basically my recommendation for the Woodstock bylaw is to really minimize the use of conditional use approval. That's not something that Two Rivers really considers good practice at this day and age.
Yeah.
And again, it's not about loosening regulations. It's not about just giving developers whatever they want because, you know, we need more housing. We need to be stating what these standards are up front in a way that's measurable. So if we're going to use conditional use, we need to have a part two there that's like, okay, what do we mean when we say, I don't have it in front of me at the moment. Actually, can we go back, Molly, maybe to the conditional use page? Yeah. So when we say, landscaping and fencing. We shall find that the proposed use or structure adequately meets such specific standards with respect to landscaping and fencing. What do we actually want with respect to landscaping and fencing? The work of the planning commission of planning is to establish what we mean when we say that up front. So landscaping and fencing, some really common things that come up. We want to fence off and make dumpsters invisible from the street. We don't want to have dumpsters visible from the street. Great. The arrangement of parking facilities and screening things off with vegetation. We want the parking to be at the back or the sides, and to the extent possible, we want the developer to screen it with trees. So these are all things that we can make boxes that the developer can tick off and say, oh, I know exactly what to anticipate, and it makes it much easier for the administrator as well, or for the DRB to say, okay, they've met this standard. That's all I would like to see in this bylaw. I'm not trying to say we need to throw out the baby with the bathwater and make this the Wild West in terms of zoning.
Mhm.
We just need to say what we want up front. So if we can go back to the next, probably 3 slides ahead. All right. So part of the reason we don't really recommend doing conditional use approval is that it duplicates site plan approval. So our fake proposal for this apartment building also already has to go through site plan approval. So why are we also doing conditional use approval on top of it? The development review board also administers site plan approval. So we're just having 2 processes where there really could be one. Site plan approval by statute can be used to regulate all sorts of things, like really anything that you might want to regulate. All that stuff that was listed in conditional use can be done in the site plan review process. It's also something that could be administered by the administrative officer and not the development review board. That's kind of a whole other can of worms. Aesthetic things can be regulated by site plan approval. So the sort of design review process that exists right now can really be rejiggered to just go through site plan approval if we're using, sort of empirical things.
What's an example of how you do an empirical aesthetic criteria? Like, how would those typically be?
So what I would recommend is what I'm ultimately going to recommend at the end of this presentation, and what we've kind of talked about before, is I think in the interest of not being obstructionist when it comes to new development, but getting the outcomes that I think we all want in terms of aesthetics, what you could do is offer a sort of package for a few different types of architecture that we like, and that we developed through consulting with all the various folks in town, having a charrette or something. If someone brought that up last time, which I think is a great idea, and we say, okay, if you want to do a building that basically has all the traits of like a colonial revival, which is a super popular style in town, or like one of the brick kind of saloon type buildings on Main Street, we'll have a package where we say, okay, you need brick or something that looks like brick. You need to have windows with whatever they're called, mullions in them. You need to have trim, and you need to have a cornice line, and you have this type of roof. We can do that for a few different like common styles. Basically, we can say, so for colonial revival, we can say clapboard windows, or excuse me, clapboard siding, windows with mullions. They're taller than they are wide. They're on a set grid.
But that makes sense.
Yeah,
you get 4 or 5, like
whatever. You basically a package of criteria for a couple of different architectural styles, and if they go through want to go through one of those packages, we can sort of fast track them.
It's like 3 well-lit paths, and then if you want to do something off the path.
Exactly. If you want to do something more bespoke, okay, you go through the design review panel and you go through the development review panel. If you want to make the Guggenheim or something, you can still do that, but it's going to be heavily scrutinized. So yeah, that's ultimately what I would recommend. But I really think all of the stuff that you might want to regulate should be done through site plan approval. That's like what we should be focusing on with the revisions that we propose. What is not working about the site plan approval as it stands right now is kind of similar to what's not working with conditional use, which is that it uses this language that my boss Kevin hates, which is shall be considered or taking into consideration. Essentially what this is right now is it lists a bunch of things that the DRB has to think about. But it does not tell them how to interpret those things. And it does not tell them what the desired outcome really is. And what's more is that it doesn't say whether the permit is approved or denied based on these things. It just says they shall be considered. So if I'm the DRB, not only do I not know how to interpret these things, I don't have to do anything one way or the other based on it. I'm just considering it. Sure. Like, well, on balance, we like this proposal. I've considered X, Y, and Z, and I approve it or I deny it. But what it should be is projects should comply or shall comply with the following objectives, not shall take into consideration the following objectives. And again, all of these need to be clear empirical criteria that a applicant can actually understand. So what does adequacy of surface drainage facilities mean? What is the actual outcome that we want to avoid to have there? We want to avoid standing water, probably. We want to avoid runoff that is, like damaging neighboring properties. But that's the terminology that we should be using. We're not just saying adequate surface drainage facilities. We're not saying the avoidance of glare. What does that mean? Like, we should not be using reflective cladding materials or something like that. That is, so in general, we need to go through and do the same thing that we would do with conditional use and say, here are the actual outcomes we want, and here are what we want to see from projects in a measurable way. Same thing for adequacy of landscaping, screening, and setbacks in regard to achieving maximum compatibility and protecting adjacent properties. You really can't actually say setbacks. I mean, dimensional standards are dimensional standards. You can't mess around with that. That's actually illegal under state law to say the setback is less than whatever the maximum or minimum is in the dimensional standards, just because it may not match with neighboring buildings. Again, this is the purpose of a zoning code and of planning is we say the setback is this is 40 feet in this district. We can't then go into a site plan approval and be like, your setback 40 feet, but it really doesn't jive with the neighborhood. Like, that's not allowed.
Basically, every constraint should be stated once, and it should be stated empirically.
Correct. Yeah.
And we don't do that today.
Right. Yeah, so that's all I really want to talk about there. We can move on. So next slide. Maybe if we can go back one just to, sorry, Molly.
Okay.
Yeah, so up on the upper portion there. So what is the documentation that the DRB is considering when they're reviewing an application? It comes from section 708. So that's my transition, my segue to the next slide. Section 708 is the application information that's required. So this is sort of the list of materials that the DRB is requiring when it comes to site plan review and conditional use. This is more just to make note of this. I don't think any of this is terrible or anything like that. I think we should probably just err on the side of more documentation rather than separating it out like this as it is right now and be like, we might require without limitation, which I don't know what that phrase means because it is limited to what's listed there. I don't know what without limitation really refers to there. If we want these things, we should just say we want these things up front, especially if they pertain to like specific criteria. Like, I don't know.
Right. So if you're going to require the parking be screened by plantings, then a planting plan.
Exactly.
Right, should just be on the list.
Just ask for it. And it might not even need to be a separate documented site plans. The site plan can just have some circles where there's going to be trees, and we'll call that a planting plan. But anyway, so yeah, this is more just to make note of that. I don't think any of this is really terrible. So design review. Here we're going to run into some problems. I think some folks probably think I have a bone to pick with design review. I just want it to be understandable, and it's really messy right now. So I'm going to highlight a few of the problems with the current bylaw when it comes to design review. The first one is this. So in the section that explains the design review districts and how that process is handled, it says, here are our design review areas. We've got the village and we've got the East End. And it describes a little bit what those areas are. and how the design review board should sort of interpret what we want to see in those areas. Here's the problem. Next slide. Show me on this map where the border is between the East End and the village. I'll give you a hint because there's no grayscale in this, which again, there should be. There is no border between them. There's no demarcation that says here's where the East End starts and here's where the village begins. It's all just one blob that says design review district. So that's a usability problem for right off the bat. Next slide. And then once we get into process, there's some real problems. So this first part, it essentially establishes a process where maybe I should start from square one, because again, there's a lot of new folks and we're using a lot of new terminology. But so there's the Village Development Review Board, and there's also the Design Review Board. That's the same acronym. The bylaw confuses those two acronyms several times and shuffles them up. I'm sure you've run into this many times, to the point where you can't tell which board they're talking about. So in the revisions, I would definitely like to clarify what the acronyms and which one's which, because it's extremely important. And it establishes this process where applicants submit materials to the Design Review Board. And then within 21 days, the Design Review Board has a meeting or hearing, not sure, they call it a meeting here, I guess, where you know, they meet with the applicant and go over the application. This is not allowed under state law. Full stop. The board, the Design Review Board under Vermont statutes is an advisory board. Their role is to advise the Development Review Board on their decisions when it comes to conditional use, variances, and site plan approval. Nothing that they do is binding. They issue a recommendation to the Development Review Board. They are also explicitly prohibited by state law from holding hearings with applicants. So this is illegal. Like, we cannot do that. We cannot require applicants to do that. They are allowed by, design review boards are allowed by state law to meet with applicants. It's the phrasing in the statutes is they may meet with applicants. Notice that it doesn't say they can compel applicants to meet with them. And it explicitly says they cannot hold hearings as a quasi-judicial body.
So if you violate design review, right? If you don't get a permit for a permanent thing today, what's the recourse of the town? Is it anything?
If you get an after the fact permit, you have to pay twice.
But what if you just choose to ignore it?
If you get reported by someone for not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we would issue fines on a daily basis until we had resolution.
But what you're saying is somebody could easily challenge that based on state law and say
they could sue you.
Yeah.
They could absolutely sue you for this. If an applicant goes to a hearing with the design review board and gets a bad period, they could sue you for having been made to go through that.
Okay.
So that's an issue.
Yeah.
Matt, I just want to clarify, design review is not issuing permits, they're issuing recommendations.
Right. So that's another thing. That's another thing that I want to talk about. So,
but wait, okay.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with that one later.
So number 2 here cannot be in the bylaws. Should not be in the bylaws. Number 1 up here at the top refers to the fact that the Village Development Review Board, that's what it's referring to there, gives a design plan approval. A design plan approval is not a thing. A conditional use permit, a zoning permit done through conditional use or through site plan approval is a thing. Design plan approval is not a separate entity. Again, the Design Review Board is just making a recommendation to the Development Review Board what they should do based on their findings on what the design of the project is. Design plan approval is not a standalone thing. It's just they're weighing in on the design of a project that has to go through conditional use or site plan approval. That's it. So nomenclature is already all screwy here. Did that answer your question, or was it about something else?
I'll follow.
Okay. Next slide. I already said that, I think. Yeah, so this is sort of the enabling language for design review districts in the Vermont statutes. And it describes the process that Molly just talked about and that I just talked about. So basically, and this was another thing I was wondering. So I don't know if I've ever seen the report. Obviously, the design review district was created a long time ago, but there is supposed to be a report that was created by the Planning Commission describing what the particular planning and design problems of the proposed district are. I don't know, has anyone seen this report? I don't know how long the design district has existed. It could be an ancient document at this point, but that's just kind of a sidebar, something I was wondering. But yeah, so down at the bottom, a design review board may be appointed by the legislative body, so the select board, or in this case, the village board of trustees, because we're really talking about the village bylaws at this point, in accordance with section 4333, to advise any appropriate municipal panel. Appropriate municipal panel is a term of art that is referring to the development review board, because they are the people that matter in this process. The design review board are just giving their opinion. Next slide. What did I want to talk about here? Okay, so yeah, this is more just about the process of how it works. So the advisory commission, which is the design board, may review the application and prepare recommendations on each of the review standards within the commission's purview for consideration by the appropriate municipal panel at the public hearing on the application. Again, that is for the development review board hearing, not for a design review board hearing, which is not allowed. And this is just what I referenced earlier. So under number 3 there, shall not be conducted as public hearings before a quasi-judicial body. So the advisory commission cannot comport themselves as if they're having a hearing or compel applicants to appear before them. The remedy that I would recommend for this is just having, when an applicant submits their proposal documents to the development review board, the design review board is CC'd on that. They get to review it. They are allowed by state law to either submit written testimony or present oral testimony at the development review board hearing. And that's it, really. They can't hold a hearing. They can't compel the applicant to have a meeting with them. They're allowed to have a meeting with them again, but an informal meeting, and that's it. So that's what I would recommend, is basically the design review board just gets to weigh in a written or oral report at the hearing. So we can really simplify a lot of the design review process that's in the bylaws right now. That's the long and short of it. Next. Okay, so now we're getting into the criteria that the design review board is able to consider. By extension, what the development review board is allowed to consider in approving the design. See, again, this is a you see where I'm struggling with this, Brian and Mike? Like, there's no such thing as a design plan approval, as I said before. It's just what they consider in their recommendation. So that's how it should be phrased. Some of these things are illegal. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you are not allowed by state law to say the dimensional requirements. So things like the height, the setback, etc., are we are going to set dimensional requirements that are less than what they are in the zoning code. So what the design review district in your bylaws is saying right now is, we can say, no, this building, it's under the height limit for the district, but it feels a little too tall. You can't say that. It's just straight up illegal. Again, it doesn't really matter, because in theory, these should just be recommendations and not criteria for that matter in a hearing. But they shouldn't be even considered, and they shouldn't, by extension, be considered in the hearing where a permit is potentially going to be issued.
So, I mean, if we don't want the height exceeding that of you know, the buildings in relation, so we should just say in our zoning.
It's gotta be in the district
Like,
dimensional requirements.
It's just based on what's already there, we figured out that number and say, that's what the,
Well, it doesn't have to be based on what's already there. It's just is based on, I mean, the zoning is trying to regulate future development, right?
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be
right,
based on
It
what's
could
but,
already
be
there.
but if our
It could
desire
be, yeah.
continues to be that it is like,
So for example, in
based
the
on
commercial light
what's already
industrial
there.
district where our hypothetical site is, the height
Mhm.
limit is 40 feet.
Mhm.
So what this is saying is when the design review panel meets, they can be like, yeah, it's 39 feet, but you know, like the building's next to it and the area, it's not really that high right now. So we're gonna say that the design is not, we don't recommend this design because it's too tall. No. If that makes sense. But yeah, if you want the height limit to be lower, that's something that we can talk about as we go through, you know, the dimensional
I'm
requirements
not
for the
saying I
districts.
do,
But
but I'm
yeah.
just saying, like, instead of saying it should be considered in relation, it's just we'll use that, the relation to set our zoning guidelines in the first place.
Yes, exactly. So this is
Instead of it
one of those
always
many
being-
instances where
Right.
we shouldn't be just feeling it out. It needs to
Mhm.
be established up front, and the way to do that is just through the district dimensional requirements.
And, but there's two things. It's just, it should be explicit, but we also shouldn't even mention it here.
But this
It's
should be
explicit in
struck.
some- It's
Right,
Just to be clear,
exactly.
this should be
Yes.
struck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other things that are actually statutorily enabled, wow, that's a tough one, enabled to be considered in a design review process. So all this stuff at the bottom, all the stuff on the next page, so proportion, pattern, materials, next. Architectural features, site features, continuity, site treatment. Some of that is more site plan stuff, honestly, but all of this is like fine to be talking about in design review, in terms of state law. And again, what I'm gonna ding it on is the shall be considered language, because it doesn't actually say what you want to see in terms of outcomes. So that's a stumbling block for an applicant. Well, the one that really grinds my gears, honestly, is the roof shape one. So the similarity or compatibility of roof shapes in the immediate area shall be considered in the construction or alteration of a building. Put yourself in the shoes of an applicant. What does that mean? What does that mean? What type of roof do I need to be proposing for my project to be approved? And what's more, there's a variety of roof shapes in every area of Woodstock. So can I really say, so when we're talking about the East End, I know what a lot of people are concerned about aesthetically is not kind of like replicating the sins of the past of what we have over there with gas stations and the infamous Pizza Chef, you know, strip mall and stuff like that. People don't want to see Pizza Chef 2, right? Tell me, based on that provision, that I can't propose something that has a flat roof and looks exactly like Pizza Chef 2.
In fact, it
and-
would be recommended because it's in relation to
Because it's in
nearby-
relation to the surrounding area, yeah. So one thing that I kind of want to disabuse people of is the fact that the status quo of these regulations is working right now, right? It's only working because no one has proposed something that you don't like yet. Someone could come in, propose Pizza Chef 2, and have a very strong basis to say, well, there's other flat roofs right over here, Ace Hardware, Pizza Chef, like what's wrong with my flat roof? And they could be issued a bad recommendation from the design review advisory board, and the DRB could ultimately choose maybe to deny the permit based on that lawsuit. And they would be right to do it because there is no actual empirical standard here for what you want to see. And so that's how I would like to see these design criteria changes. Again, offering maybe some common options for fast tracking things, and then maybe they do want a flat roof, maybe they want to make a crazy Frank Gehry building or something like that. Like, sure, they can go through the more bespoke process, but like, what do we actually want to see when we say roof shape? And that goes for all this stuff, really. You can probably cherry pick examples of everything under the sun from around Woodstock, and you're in a legal, you know, disaster if someone wants to go there. But if we're saying up front, this is what we want to see, and it's something that's measurable, and Mike or the DRB can just check a box and be like, yep, they did what we said they should do, then you're covered and we'll have good outcomes. And what's more, you'll hopefully get more development proposals because people know what to expect. So next slide, hopefully I'm winding down here. Yeah, so can we answer my two questions from the beginning? So you click Molly, what can I build on this site? Oops. What can I build on this site? If you click one more time, something should pop up, sort of, right? It's more straightforward than dealing with all the conditional use stuff, but as far as like the basics go, yes, I know how many units, the limit of how many units I could build roughly. I know the dimensional requirements, the setback, the height, all that stuff. But I don't ultimately know if my permit will be approved because of all the other processes that I have to go through. So next, so click. Here's kind of the short list of what conditions I have to meet to get approval. I know that the general and specific standards might apply. I know that conditional use approval definitely applies for my proposal. I know that site plan review definitely applies. And I know that the design review board, which again is advisory, but the bylaws do not make clear at all, is going to have a chance to weigh in. Are the criteria, specific criteria under all those processes, clear, empirical, and stated explicitly in the bylaw? I would say resounding no. I hope that everybody understands that now and maybe gets a little bit of a taste, if you haven't looked at the bylaws before, of how difficult these can be to navigate for applicants. So next slide. If any of you have read the memo that I put out back in October, just kind of from my desk review of the bylaws, this is kind of stuff I've all said before. I've said all these things before, but really looking specifically at usability, these are my recommendations. So again, I would move multi-unit housing in the village from conditional use to permitted with site plan approval. So what is the importance of that phrasing? That's kind of what we advise at Two Rivers as sort of like best practices for, you know, a functional and modern bylaw that isn't getting in the way of development, right? Permitted with site plan approval. It means if I follow the very clear rules of site plan approval, I will get a permit. So that's the important. Conditional use just seems like murky waters, basically, compared to that. And that's very important. So we're eliminating that duplicative process of conditional use and site plan approval. And like I've said before, just doing everything that we want to see through site plan approval. Regulate the aesthetics and all the other desired effects. So, you know, whatever that might be that relates to how we want the site laid out that isn't part of the dimensional requirements. So fences, planting, parking, access, all that type of stuff that isn't like setback or height. All of that can be done through site plan approval. So I would move all that stuff in there. And again, I would recommend this thing where we offer kind of a set of different architectural style packages where we're defining like what's an acceptable aesthetic up front. And if the developer, if the applicant is on board with one of those packages, then Mike or the DRB can just check through the boxes and say, yep, they've met all these things, and we'll skip the design review process. And in general, just reform the design review process to be functional and clear about what the parameters are and legal. That was a long monologue. Sorry about that. But I think that's the last of my slides. Like Jacob's presentation, I know that is a lot to digest. I'm going to come back to the next planning commission meeting with red lines, so line edits of the bylaw, to, you know, insertions and deletions of stuff that I think should be cut and stuff that I think should be added, and making all those changes. And then we'll start the long process of you guys all, you know, deciding whether to approve the changes or to keep them as is. And hopefully we'll eventually have a draft that can go to hearing. As far as like what the timeline is for that, it really just depends on you guys and how detail oriented you want to be, how much public process we want to do. Do we want to have design charrettes and involve the public and other groups and stuff like that when we're talking about the design standards and stuff like that? Or do we kind of want to just go it alone. But yeah, I mean, it can be short, it can be long, but yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Great presentation. If you're coming back to the next meeting with red lines, would it be possible for you to send that to us, a couple days in advance so we have time to
Yeah,
absorb that, so
definitely.
it's not just in the moment?
Yeah, no, that's something we'll have to walk through. And honestly, there's more there than I had initially thought. So we might just be doing red lines of, one article at a time or something like that, just to keep this manageable. I mean, there's kind of no point in having the entire document redlined for next meeting because we wouldn't get through it anyway.
That's fine, but whatever
so-
you're planning to do in advance would
Yep.
be really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I want to have everyone have time to review them, of course. So, yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Is everyone shell shocked? I mean,
I'll make a comment.
Be helpful, yep.
This didn't come up because in this hypothetical redevelopment proposal, I don't think it's in a conservation area, if I remember about that parcel, but also there's a very similar process routing applicants to go to the Conservation Commission to talk with them about their proposed development. If it's within one of the 4 conservation areas, I think it's ridgelines, the buffers for riparian areas, wetlands and such like that. I don't know of any other town that makes applicants go talk to the Conservation Commission about this. They can certainly be an advisory body like a design review and have them submit comments to the development review board. But I don't think I've ever heard of another town actually requiring or asking an applicant to go talk to a Conservation Commission about that.
Again, if they're an advisory body, they are actually not allowed. You're not allowed to compel applicants to talk to them, or to have them act as a quasi judicial body, giving approvals for projects and things like that. You can always say, and I'm sure this happens a lot with Mike or whoever happens to be in the planning office, where it's always smart to have applicants go talk to stakeholders and send them out there and go talk to people. So you might say it's smart to go talk with the Conservation Commission, see if they have any objections to your projects or issues that they want to work with you on, just because that we want to have everything be harmonious, but the bylaws can't really compel applicants to talk to or seek approval from an advisory body like that, as we have seen tonight. So
Hey, Harry and everybody, this is Stephanie online. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. Thank you for doing this. This is incredible. I really appreciate the way you've summarized it all. I just had a quick question. So if we want to start sort of rerouting applicants to chat with Design Review and Conservation Commission outside of a proper formal meeting, can we do that before bylaws are changed, or do we have to actually wait and get these changes done in the bylaws before we change the meeting process?
I'm not a lawyer.
Okay.
I think having design review panel hearings is currently unenforceable. So
Okay.
I think it would, if you write a law that's illegal, like thou shalt kill someone, like no one is compelled to follow that law, So
Yeah.
I would say if the law itself is illegal, then I would not be behaving as if it is.
Okay.
Maybe
not
this
a
is
lawyer,
something
so.
that should, maybe this is something that should go, be asked of the Two Rivers
Town council.
Ottaquechee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or VLCT, yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you so much, Harry. I really appreciate it. This is very informative.
Awesome.
Good. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll send those slides to everyone for your future reference.
And does everyone know how to find the bylaws?
I actually was gonna ask that if we had a link to. I
Yeah.
know I found them accidentally before and then haven't been able to find them again.
Yeah, I can send out the link to everybody. They're on the planning and zoning department website. but it's not.
It's
To
not-
Alex's point earlier about our the state website, we have some usability issues on the town website as well. So
Yeah, and that's like a relatively easy fix that I think I've pointed out before. There's a couple of like sub pages in the drop-down menu on the website where for the planning and zoning department, and the documents don't always match between the different sub pages. Some of them are outdated. Sometimes they don't have the maps on them and stuff like that. So I would maybe just say, get rid of those sub pages, streamline everything on the one page, and make sure that all those documents are correct. You can get all the updated documents on the Two Rivers website as well. If you go to our town section, that we kind of aggregate all the local regs for each town. So that's another way to get to it.
thanks, Harry.
All right, with that, does anyone want a motion to adjourn? I think we're through the agenda for the evening.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All right. Everybody say aye who wants to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye. Awesome. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Good job,
There's a
Cherry.
lot of talking.